Hey class, this is Mr. DeVoe-Peterson, and let's run through Chapter 6 in your wireless networking book. There's a couple concepts, kind of big concepts we talk about in this chapter, and that is a couple different modes of connecting devices together. One is ad hoc, where you're not connected to a backbone infrastructure, and the other two methods they talk about are infrastructure modes. So we go through that, and let's see what else. We talk about the difference between data rates and how fast your connection should be in actual experience throughput. And then we talk about the different ways we can connect our devices to the network or to each other. In this case, the independent basic service set, they're just connected to, and I'll get to these in a minute, that these devices are connected to themselves. We've got a tablet, we have some laptops. They're not connected to a larger infrastructure network. So here it is, all peer-to-peer. And some of the conditions that are required for that to be met is that we all are connected to the same service set identifier, the SSID. That's the name of your wireless network. We're on the same RF channel. Maybe we're running a 2.4 and we're on channel 3. So we all have to be set to that channel, that radio frequency. And lastly, our security configuration should be about the same. Here, we're all WPA2 personal security for all these 4 devices. This you're not going to see is set up that often. I have yet to see it. So what's more common, and we'll skip hiding SSID, there's ways to get around that. This is talking about an example of setting up your software and your operating system so that you can connect in an ad hoc mode to other devices. And here we have the same. We're choosing ad hoc, BG, value 1. We're doing all the same settings. Again, don't think you're going to be doing it. There's no centralized security. Those are some downfalls. And you'll rarely see it in real life. It is easy to set up, and if there's no wireless network and you want to connect 2 devices for whatever reason, maybe you're sharing music, then that might be a way to do that. All right. So getting to what you're most often going to see is the basic service set connectivity, and that's where your devices are connected through some kind of access point. Be that combined in your modem router or separate in an enterprise type small office, home office deployment, and to we call our DS, our distribution center, getting onto the wired network, basically. So this is the most common. You'll see this, and it's got one access point, and you're connected. So where will you see them? All the time in homes. Nowadays, with working at home, small office, home office, and even some small to large businesses they don't take up a lot of real estate, if the space is not too large, because you can't scale them as much. There's just one access point. You probably could increase it to add some access points, but most of them are just one. And this is just showing you that setup. And the reason why they say under this type of system you'd want to do a site survey is because you have to decide where is that central location for placing that access point. And there's apps you can put on your smartphone to kind of look at signal strength and figure that out. And then you have more of an enterprise type deployment. I was involved in one of these not too long ago with 3 access points using Ubiquiti products. That's your extended service set. So what it is set of one or more interconnected basic service sets, and they all look the same, with the same SSID, that is the same network name, and the access points handle the handing off or transition from one location to another. So your device that's connected to ABC Corporation as maybe a network name, an SSID name, would still see that at whatever end of the building you're at that might have more than one access point. You don't have to change to a different network. So you can see the how that can scale up quite easily for a larger organization. So that's the biggest. So we went from the independent separate ad hoc to the basic service set, and then to the extended where there's more than one access point. That's kind of the big picture of this. And here this kind of graphically shows it to you, access point 1 and access point 2, and then all the clients connected. You'll see this term, this acronym, BSA, the basic service area, or where is the coverage for that is provided by that access point. What is that? That radio frequency range or coverage area? What is it? And a couple. This is kind of a repeat here for you a little bit. The SSID is the network name, if you think of it like that. And extended service set, you have more than one access point, right? What else? The basic service set identifier, we know what an SSID is, the service set identifier. The basic service set identifier is the MAC address, right? The MAC address you have on all, network cards in or connected to your computer. And that is the unique identifier for the actual, the access point itself for the medium that you're getting onto. What else? Okay, so to get on the network, we have a number of helper frames, data packets, if you will, or smaller. They're smaller than a packet. They're a frame, actually. And they serve the function of getting you on the network, to let you know the network's available, to manage you transitioning from one access point to another. So here we talk about authenticating and associating, reserving the medium that gets you onto it, exchanging data, and then the power save function. With a lot of the modern devices nowadays, they go into a kind of a pre-assigned hibernation mode where they're not really trying to listen to activity on the network itself, yet they get frames to tell them when the information is available to them. So what is that frame? It's data traveling through the air, and we call that a frame, right? And the management frames, their job is only to change information to the immediate wireless device, from that to the actual access point itself, right? That's what they do. And there's beacon frames, there's probe requests asking to see if their network's out there, which you can manually do with the software of your device. Authentication frames, a lot of different frames. Control frames have to do with reserving the medium, and they're used to request data and maybe to be notified to come out of power save mode, things like that. They help control your connectivity, to keep you connected, and to serve as an acknowledgement that yes, now my system, my unit is now listening to data on the wireless network. I'm able to receive data. So and then we like to call the actual data you're transmitting, we like to call that the payload. That's the actual information. With all the other information gets tacked onto those data packets, the payload is your data. That's what it is. And it could be, quality of service, would maybe do cellular connections, voice over IP phones for, like Comcast phones. They're not analog, they're over the internet. How do you know there's a network available? Passive scanning lets you listen. The access point's not broadcasting out. You're listening. You're just listening to see. Well, actually, the access point is broadcasting out. You're listening to see, is there a wireless network I can connect to in this area? And then active, I think that's next here. Active scanning might be because you've already saved that wireless network. You've been to that Starbucks. You know that network, and you've told it to auto connect, which I would not set that as auto connect, as a security precaution, only with your home and business network. So just to be aware of that. So this is that access point, and yes, I am the SSID, the network name. It wouldn't be 1, 2, 3, 4. It'd be Starbucks or whatever it would be for that example. And you're looking for it because you've reserved it. So a couple ways of authenticating to that network, that is to get you onto it, not the same as your user ID and password. It's a little different. It's to get you started before digital information is really transmitted with payload data, that is, right? So that's to verify your identity, to get you on it. One is open system, and when I highlight the book, I think the green is what you see when you go into the ebook, but the yellow is just on mine. So it's showing up on the video, but when you go to the book, the ebook, you may not see the yellow. I'm not sure what you see. Someone will have to let me know. So you would think the open system would be more problematic than the shared key, right? which is not the case. It's just the opposite. Because the shared key, the data is traveling in clear text and can be intercepted. So it's not as safe as you might think it is, and that's why web security, which uses that, is not a good security use for any wireless network. So most of the systems are set up as open system to get you connected. Data frames are exchanged. I think it talks about it here. Where is it? There is no validation of your identity. It just gets you on the network. That's all that's happening. Authenticating you to the access point. Your device gets authenticated, so communication can take place, right? So open system is the most common. Shared key is problematic, and I think it says so here somewhere. Yeah, here it is. Shared key authentication is considered flawed because when we say the data is sent across in clear text, that means it's not encrypted. Anybody listening with, certain kind of Linux systems, like Kali Linux, for those that are already aware of that, on a laptop can intercept that information with software programs. So WEP uses it. WEP is not secure. WEP should not be used. And this is some other frames. This talks about, this takes place after you've been, let's see, how do we talk about this? After you've been authenticated, either by open system or a shared key, and most likely it's going to be open system, the device can now pass traffic. Now you've done the handshake, as an example of meeting someone, and now you can start talking. That's just happening from the same kind of behaviors happening with data and devices on the network. That's all it is. You can get de-authenticated to a wireless network, and you could just simply log off. And that's what that means. Let's see. A translation bridge is just getting your device onto the infrastructure. That's all they're talking about. Going from wireless to wired type medium. Distribution system, DS, is one or more basic. Let's see. Distribution system. In this case, we have a couple here, right? We have a segment. We have wireless access points. You have one or more connected devices to it, and that makes up, where is it? The distribution center. They talk about translation bridge here, and that's just you connected to two or more dissimilar type of LANs, from wired to wireless. That data has to be translated to, instead of radio frequency in the air, to electricity, to pulses. So that's all that is. Data rates we talked about, and that is, let's see, that is how fast you can transmit data on that wireless device. And you probably will not see that speed, right? Because you may have interference in that room. You may have to go through a wall or pass through a window or reflect off filing cabinets before you get from your device to the access point. And you may have, a dozen or dozens of devices connected to the network, and that'll slow down the speed for everybody when that happens. So throughput is the actual speed you can achieve on that wireless network. And this is a little example showing you throughput with multiple devices. It's an exercise in here where you just kind of understand it visually. You've got a wireless device and you have a wired device, and you're comparing different throughput speeds with this exercise with the JPerf software, which uses, if I remember, SourceForge. So look at it, see what it's talking about. It's giving you IP address information. It'll track bandwidth and speed here as you use the software, and here we have the speed measured here as you're using it. Dynamic rate switching is an interesting concept, and it makes sense if you think about it. And what it means is this client, this laptop is going to get a faster speed, 450 megabits, compared to the client, the laptop that's farther away, right? The data's got to travel through thin air. I recall when the college first, I want to say they had Cisco wireless access points outside the campus, and there was a flaw in the firmware. And what happened is the farthest device dictated the speed for everybody else connected in that radio frequency range. That is, someone on the very fringe of that that range of coverage slowed down the speed for everybody that was closer. That later got fixed with firmware. So this concept just means that the device, if properly configured with the proper firmware, will adjust the speed for the devices that are at different distances from the access points. That's all it means. It's an easy concept, really, but in practice it doesn't always work. So just be aware of that. Their firmware updates are really important. Let's see what. Okay, so this talks about, and I have another term for this, the roaming capability. If you have a deployment with multiple access points, and you're going to have one SSID, one network Wi-Fi name, all right? ABC Corporation, for example. As you travel to different areas, and that facility that has multiple access points, you still keep connected to ABC Corporation or Acme Corporation, whatever it might be called. You don't have to change the network name. It's all managed centrally, all that for you. Now, how does that happen? Well, there's a handoff of information because you were associated to the wireless network when you're one end of the building. As you get disconnected from that access point sends information to the next one that shows that you are associated to the wireless network, so you don't have to re-authenticate to the network, right? So that is roaming. The manufacturers have what I like to call the secret sauce of how they manage the roaming from access point to access point, and they weren't great at first. They're much better now today than they were 5 years ago, but they weren't great at first when they came out. So that's transitioning and roaming. And as you might imagine, if you're using voice over IP phones and you're walking maybe from your office to a conference room, you don't want that connection, the quality of service connection drops. So it's important that when you're looking at this technology, these access points and the claims, you look at reviews of what customers are saying about how well they handle the transitioning and roaming. So there's some insight from mistakes I have made where I've not paid as close attention to that, so that you can learn from my mistakes and make all new ones yourself, but always verify the manufacturer's information with real life reports of how well the equipment works and so forth. This talks about dropping your connection and reestablishing it. Power save modes is to save battery life on portable devices that might be connecting to the network, and this may sound confusing, and a lot of it can be eliminated by corporations. They dictate what equipment employees have, except for when you bring your own equipment. But if you're just using company equipment, they can say, you know what, everybody's going to be on AC or AX for wireless. There's going to be no G, no N, and any of that. In a perfect world, then you could control that, but that's not always the way it works when you have maybe a guest area and it's a medical place and you offer free Wi-Fi, or it's a car dealership and there's free Wi-Fi in the waiting room for service. You offer, network connectivity, and because of that, you probably want to try to accommodate maybe not B and G, but at least N or mixed modes, so you allow those devices onto the wireless network. It makes the customers happier if you do that. This talks about the mode for, in this case, if you're going to allow 802.11n and the settings for that. That's not something you probably have to determine when you start out in networking and do wireless, but you would just be aware that, in this case, mode 3 is probably more common out of these modes 0 through 3. And that's what happens when I leave my cell phone ringer on. So let me turn that off, and I will thank him later for calling me. What else? Yeah, that's it. That's chapter 6. A lot of concepts that seem kind of daunting, but they really aren't. And, these decisions about what kind of devices will you allow to connect to your network, and will you allow, well, you're not going to allow B and G for the most part, but you'll allow N, AC, and AX now, the faster throughput. I think that's it. So send me an email if you have a question on chapter 6, and good luck with the reading.